On the Isles of Scilly, the thoughts of the islanders are turning to the future and the new year. Heike the vet has very fixed views about what she's looking for. What are you hoping for this new year?
A man!
Sorry?
A man! Well, no, not that bad.
I think you'll go down a hit with a fisherman.
That would be nice.
A bold new attempt to get the £10 million needed to build a brand new school and transform the heart of island life is gathering momentum.
Sometimes you feel when you're out on that little rock, you feel a bit isolated sometimes, but I feel like I really want to go back and start this project going now. You know, he's inspired me immensely, really.
And it's the start of a brave adventure which could dramatically improve the island's fortunes. 3,000 miles in an open boat is quite something.
Yeah, it's tough going. They're either mad or very brave. I hope the latter.
With the arrival of the winter storms, the Isles of Scilly feel remoter than ever. Bad weather means flights to and from the islands are cancelled and often prevents cargo boats that keep Scilly supplied from leaving the mainland. At times like these, the islanders are thrown back more than ever on their own devices. During the Christmas holidays, for example, attention begins to focus on the old stage at the back of the town hall on the main island of St Mary's, the setting for the biggest theatrical event in the Scilly calendar.
No, don't screw your eyes out.
In a couple of weeks' time, it'll be opening night for the annual Island Pantomime, invariably a sellout. This year, it's a version of Cinderella, written and directed by Maggie, the island's dog warden. And just before he leaves home for tonight's rehearsal, one of the show's leading characters Maggie has cast is nervously going through his lines.
How dare you, you Italian idiot! Ridiculous man, these foreigners, far too excitable for my taste.
The Reverend David Easton has been the Methodist minister on Scilly for 6 years, but this is the first time he's put his head on the block by taking a part in the panto, and he's determined not to make a mess of it. You're the Lord High Chamberlain?
Yes, I am indeed, yes.
And what kind of a character are you? Are you a rogue or...?
No, I'm a bit of a pompous old windbag, really, who likes to think he's more important than he is. So, typecast, you might say.
I wasn't going to say that.
No, you thought it though, didn't you?
The panto traditionally comes together at the last moment. Tonight, it's the dress rehearsal.
Socks, smelly, smelly, smelly socks.
Some of the older hands are worried about David's inexperienced hamming up.
Smelly socks.
Later, there's a bit of a disaster. The ambitious pyrotechnic effects cause an early end to the proceedings.
At least the fire alarm's working.
The fire alarm's gone off.
The fire alarm, the pyrotechnics, which we've had loads of times, have never done that before, so we don't quite know how to stop it. Or we're hoping the fire brigade will come.
Shouldn't we all be evacuating the building?
Well, yes, but we thought we'd just do the finish, then we'll evacuate.
So has everybody got to leave the building now?
When you're ready.
Oh dear, not a great dress rehearsal. And opening night not far away. At this time of year, island life is desperately quiet. Nearly all the hotels, guest houses and restaurants are closed, and most of the boats are laid up until the spring. With few visitors around and island life grinding to a standstill, the Reverend David knows that Scilly at Christmas can be a lonely place. When he's not on official business, David spends most of his time keeping in regular contact with the islanders.
Oh, hello. Good afternoon. Nice to see you. Thank you. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
So, you're with the family on Christmas Day, are you? Yeah.
The Christmas services in the church and chapel are often the only chance many of them will have to get out and meet friends.
Hi, hello. I wonder if you could put that in the window for me, please, for our Christmas Day service. That's thanks.
The Reverend David lives alone in a small flat that goes with the job. When asked to come here, he took the post with a certain trepidation. But over the years, he's developed an abiding love for the islands. In a sense, Scilly has now become his family, his life. What do you think when you walk around a place like this?
Well, I just think it's so fantastic. I suppose you'd say it's elemental, really. I mean, all the elements at play. I mean, on a day like this, when there's a fairly stiff, strong wind blowing, and you look out across the sea and see the rocks and the sky, and it just, yeah, so all the elements at play here. It's really a very, well, I suppose you might say, a very sort of spiritual experience in some ways, really. I suppose it's a deep, profound experience, and I think Scilly is like that, all these different elements coming into play with one another.
Do you like it here?
I do. I think it's fantastic, yes. I mean, it has its moments like anywhere else, but it's a really great place to live, yes. I mean, I love going off on a day off to an off-island somewhere and walking on one of the beaches or climbing up the rocks and round the hills. Yes, it's a really special place for that.
But David's life here is by no means secure. In a few months' time, there will come a moment when a decision has to be made about David's whole future on Scilly. Over on the mainland, an adventure which could have a huge effect on the year ahead on Scilly is beginning to be played out. 4 of Scilly's finest oarsmen are preparing to put to sea in a rather unusual vessel. Under the watchful eye of the Penlee lifeboat, the little boat makes its way out of Newlyn Harbour into the rough waters of Mounts Bay for sea trials. This rowing boat is the aptly named Scilly Boys, and next June it'll be entering a 3,000-mile rowing race right across the Atlantic from New York to the Isles of Scilly. Today there's a press call for the mainland media to launch the attempt by Scilly Boys to win the trophy, raise a lot of money for local charities, and bring honour, glory and international fame to the islands.
Join me and the Scilly Boys as they prepare for a marathon rowing challenge.
It'll directly affect the lives of many other islanders too. In particular, one Scillonian who's just moving into the new studio workshops behind one of the main beaches back on St Mary's. These are designed to give a showcase to island art and craftsfolk and have just opened up for business. The idea is that visitors will be able to watch them at work and buy their wares. One of the studios has been taken over by newcomer Vicky Heaney, who hopes to fund her new life on Scilly by selling the prints and pictures she's making of island birds. The opening days of the business have gone better than Vicky had expected. So now a long-held dream to fly to New York to wave off the Scilly Boys rowers on their epic journey across the Atlantic is becoming a reality. It's going to be quite expensive, are you saying?
I am, yes, but also I think if I book it in the next few weeks, that's, you know, the earlier you book it, the better. So I do plan to book soon, and but I just think it's such an amazing thing they're doing for all the charities, and yeah, really excited about it.
So you're actually going to go over and be there to give them moral support?
I think so. Yeah, I plan to see them off and then meet them when they come home as well. Yeah, I don't think I'm the only one either. I think there'll be a good contingent from the island.
Really? How many people do you think might be going?
I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and we'll see how many. But yeah, I think there'll be a few. Yeah. They close New York Harbour, and the boats go out and past the Statue of Liberty. It's going to be absolutely fabulous. So yeah, I'm really excited about doing that.
The end of the race on Scilly will bring in hundreds, if not thousands, of visitors and media from all over the world, making it the biggest event on the islands for years. Soon the boat will be on its way from here to its permanent home back on Scilly, where months of grueling training will soon get underway. At last, the Christmas festivities are reaching a climax on Scilly, with an island tradition that begins high up at the old Elizabethan fortress on St Mary's, the Star Castle. And here it's the adults, not the children, who are reenacting the nativity story.
The shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby, who was lying in the manger.
Later, they set off through the main street to pay a visit to each of the pubs. The idea is that at each pub, the cold-hearted landlord emerges to say there's no room at the inn and send them packing.
Joseph! Are you well? And how's baby Jesus?
Well, he's not with us.
Has he not? Oh, he's still...
Yeah. Have you got anything?
No, we don't.
No?
Please leave us alone.
How dare you? Onwards.
Things don't always go quite according to plan. And by the time the procession reaches David's chapel, one or two of the shepherds are under suspicion of being slightly the worse for wear.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you here this evening very much indeed.
This being Scilly, the chapel is packed. There's scarcely standing room. All the churches are represented. Beside David is Father Guy, the Anglican chaplain, and a visiting Roman Catholic priest. But there's one person who's not here. The vet, Dr. Heike Dawn, is the only Jewish person on the islands. So tonight, instead of going to the chapel, Heike and her son Sammy are trying on their fancy dress costumes for the big traditional New Year's Eve party that's coming up.
Pull, Sammy, pull, pull. Okay.
You look great, Heike.
Do you think?
I do. What are you going as?
A lady of the street.
Oh.
The Dickensian kind of lady of the street. Actually, I want to be a victim of Jack the Ripper.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did you
Whitechapel, you know, London, Whitechapel.
The London Ripper murders.
Yeah, you know.
What are you hoping for this new year then?
A man!
Sorry?
A man!
A man?
Well, no, not that bad.
Is that what your New Year's resolution is, to get yourself a man?
No, it's just fun, you know. But it would be nice, you know, to have more people who, you know, would come up to you and tell you, you know, you seem to be a nice person. Yeah.
Because you're very definitely single, aren't you?
Yeah, very much.
And you're looking for romance?
No, I'm not a romantic person.
You're looking for a companion?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there aren't many available men on Scilly, are there?
Yeah, that's it. So if nobody turns up eventually, then I'll just remain mother of Sammy.
A spinster lady?
Yeah, yeah.
I think you'll go down a hit with a fisherman.
That would be nice.
A few days later, and the islanders start to emerge from their homes for the last and biggest party of the year. Everyone, absolutely everyone, wears fancy dress. Some of them have been making their outfits for months.
I'm going to need a belt for this one.
Well, we'll put a belt on.
Even the legendary island boatman Fraser Hicks is persuaded by his wife Julie to forgo his fisherman's smock and oilies to don a splash of eyeliner and blusher.
That looks great. Yeah,
Now the other
bloody
Hey, your dad's going to be so proud.
Yeah, he'll be delighted.
Do you know, you look like one of your aunties.
Hey, that's bad news.
Soon the pubs are beginning to fill up with a bizarre array of customers. But for Father Guy, up at the chaplaincy, this is a moment of reflection on his first 12 months in the job. Guy admits he's found it difficult to integrate into island life. As the only Anglican priest here, he's felt increasingly isolated, and he's upset a number of the locals by his unbending belief in traditional church values. But he's determined to make a go of it.
In one way, it's been a difficult year, but perhaps I should have known that. But Yeah, it's been interesting. Still very early days, of course, here, because you're getting used to the cycle of living here on these islands, getting used to the people, and the next year I hope to build on a slightly firmer foundation, because I know how it all works now, because I've been here a year. So.
As you said, it's not been the easiest of years for you. What do you think you've learned from the last 12 months?
Stick at it.
The Reverend David knows only too well that it takes time for newcomers to earn the trust of the islanders. It's taken him years to become part of the fabric of the place. The key is to throw yourself into this unusual community. For example, tonight is the night that traditionally everyone lets their hair down. And the consensus is that this year's party is the best ever.
I hope the New Year's a man.
Bedeviled by bad luck, personal tragedies and appalling weather, most people on Scilly are only too glad to see the back of the outgoing year. This, at last, is a moment to start looking forward to a more hopeful future. A few days later, and at last it's the big opening night for the annual Island Pantomime. Every ticket for every performance was sold weeks ago. Special boat trips have been arranged to bring over supporters from the off-islands.
Thank you. Yep, lovely.
With his debut before a paying public of his congregations now imminent, new boy the Reverend David is looking decidedly edgy. With the experienced old-timers at the helm on stage, things get off to a good start. Backstage, the Lord High Chamberlain awaits his first entrance.
How are you feeling? Because you're on at the moment.
Sure, once I'm on there, and hope as long as I get my first line, I should be all right. Oh, don't ask me that. With respect, Your Majesty, time is moving on, and it really is now that the Prince Charming should start to shoulder some of the King's problems. That's the opening line. I've got that. Fine.
Oh,
the rest of it, I don't remember any of the rest of it, but that's the first one. I'll say that every 5 minutes.
You haven't got a safety pin. This is coming adrift from here. If I could just sort of pin them together.
At last, it's the minister's big moment.
I mean, how are we to get the Simoners to accept his responsibilities? Come along, Lord Chamberlain, you must have some ideas.
With respect, Your Majesty, time is moving on, and it really is now that Prince Charming should start to shoulder some of the King's problems.
Oh, pooh, Lord Chancellor, don't be so stuffy. He was looking...
At first, the jury seems to be out on David's performance. Regardless of the consequences, the minister decides to really go for it.
After all, I've had very few lines.
In the end, it's a triumph.
David, how's it going? Okay. Yes. Fine. It's quite energetic, isn't it? The Isles of Scilly today, the West End tomorrow.
The pyrotechnics set off the fire alarm again, but such is the success of the evening that nobody seems to take a blind bit of notice. It's a relief that David's gone down so well. Soon, he might need all the support from the islanders that he can get. For the island children, the first week of January sees the arrival of the new term. And right now there's been a lot of discussion about the whole future of the school and its ageing building. The boats bring in children from the off-islands, and once everyone has stowed the luggage, classes can get underway. But on this particular morning, one important person is missing. Over on the mainland, at the heart of the diocese in Truro, the school's head teacher, Andrew Penman, is attending a crucial meeting to discuss the future of the Five Islands School. Since it's a Church of England school, Bishop Bill is in the chair. Beside Andrew is Chairman of the Governors, Tim Guthrie, representatives of all the education authorities and the government's Department of Education from Whitehall are also there.
My name is Bill and I'm the Bishop of Truro, with a great interest actually in the Isles of Scilly, but more particularly today, I'm Chairman of the Darcy Board of Education.
The meeting has been called to discuss the sensitive issue of a brand new building to replace the old existing school, which is falling to bits and is no longer fit for purpose.
We've got a lot to get through, and we want to end up with today not just being a talking shop.
The meeting is to be held in private. The school has asked the government for £9.5 million to begin building a new school, arguing that it's the most important institution on the islands and that without it, island life as they know it couldn't survive. It's a request that's been made before and that's been repeatedly turned down. Back on Scilly and down in the chapel, the Reverend David's thoughts are also turning to the future and a year ahead which could change his life completely. Unlike Father Guy in the Church of England, every few years a Methodist minister has to be re-elected to his post. And the vote on David's future is only months away.
So in layman's terms, then, effectively there's a democratic vote on whether you should stay.
Yes, I suppose there is really, yes.
Now you want to stay here. How would you feel if they asked you to go?
I'd never speak to them again.
It would be terrible.
Well, yes, but the worst things happen at sea, so you'd live with that. I mean, I would not be unemployed. There's a shortage of Methodist ministers in the country, so I wouldn't be on the street. I'm in a very fortunate position that even if the circuit did say they didn't want me, I wouldn't be homeless, I wouldn't be unemployed. I might go somewhere else that I might not have chosen to go to, but certainly I wouldn't be destitute. It's not a case of the congregation on a Sunday morning being asked yes or no and sticking their hands in the air. It's done through a representative meeting of the churches in the Methodist circuit.
But if they wanted to get rid of you, then they could?
Oh, absolutely they could, yes.
Over in Truro, the meeting over the future of the Five Islands School is coming to an end. Much to everyone's surprise, and without even the long-running battle they'd assumed would lie ahead, the government has just agreed to write a cheque for the new school building.
Oh, it was a very good meeting indeed. There was terrific enthusiasm for the scheme, and not only that, but we've actually got the money for the scheme to happen. What we hope is that the islands will be as happy and as rejoiced at it as we do.
It's been absolutely fabulous. I feel very, very positive today. We've had a total agreement. The offer from the DFES is really very exciting, and it will secure quality schooling and education for all on the islands now, I think for probably the next 30 years, so it's been a fabulous day.
As we know, the school's been through a difficult period, and this is like a renaissance. It's growing out of that difficult period. They don't know back on the islands yet, but when they do, they'll be really delighted.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Penman.
And how are we this morning?
Fine, thank you.
Well, I've got something very exciting to tell you this morning. The government wrote to us and said you can have a new school building. That is fairly big.
It won't just be the children who'll benefit. The new school complex, which could be built on St Mary's southern coastline on land behind Old Town Bay, will provide education facilities for all. and will be the single biggest construction project ever seen on the islands. At this time of year, the main harbour on St Mary's is normally very quiet indeed. This morning, though, there's a flurry of activity. 4 island men are taking to the water at the start of a rather unusual mission. And on their shoulders stands a very great deal. Some of the islanders gather on the quay to wish them well on their first training session of the new year on Silly Boys, just arrived from the mainland.